Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Emily Counts, and I'm the Community Advancement Coordinator here at ACCE. And thank you for joining us today on our webinar on pivoting events to virtual. My colleague Susan McGuire is also here today, and
Hi, everyone. Welcome.
we are happy to have Callie D'Angelo, Senior Director of Membership Services and Small Business Initiatives at the Gwinnett Chamber, join us today. Callie will be presenting on best practices for pivoting your events and programs to digital and virtual platforms. But before I kick everything off, we're going to go over a few housekeeping items. All attendees are in listen-only mode to avoid background noise. At the end of the presentation, you will have an opportunity to ask questions through the chat function. You'll see where I posted a short chat below. That's where you can ask your questions. Please send the questions to either Callie or me, and we will answer them. If we don't get to all the questions, we will get back to you within about 48 hours. You can also share an idea to the group through the chat and even share resources and links. We will be recording this webinar, and it will be available on our events division page tomorrow, barring any technical difficulties. If you would like to share other resources, please feel free to email them to me, and I will make sure everyone has them. My email is ecounts@acce.org, and I'll send that around too. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Callie. Callie D'Angelo has been in the nonprofit organization management industry for nearly 15 years, serving in organizations all around the state of Georgia. Currently, D'Angelo is the Senior Director of Membership Services and Small Business Initiatives at the Gwinnett Chamber, a 2,300 member organization in the Metro Atlanta region. Prior to this role, she served in its Program and Events Department as Manager, Senior Manager, and then Director. Before relocating to the Metro Atlanta area, she has served with the Savannah Area Chamber and Visit Savannah, and held positions of membership coordinator and then small business and events manager. Without further ado, Callie, I will pass the floor over to you.
Thanks so much, Emily and Susan, and thank y'all all for allowing me to speak with you today. I'm super excited to be amongst Chamber friends. I know that we share common victories and common struggles, and I'm so happy to be spending some time with you all today to discuss some best business practices for digital programs that we have implemented here at the Gwinnett Chamber. So as Emily had mentioned, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can, but I'm a resource for you. My contact information will be on the slide deck. So if you have any follow-up questions, just let me know. Feel free to reach out. And also, I'm hoping my dog won't bark during the webinar. So if it does, and I have to go quickly on mute, that's what's happening, okay? So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to switch over my presentation. Okay, does everything look good? All right, perfect. So we have found that Zoom has been the most user-friendly option for both Chamber members as well as staff. And we have been utilizing the paid version, which includes up to 500 attendees. There is no time limit with the paid version as compared to the free version, which limits you to 40 minutes per meeting or event. And also there are two key distinctions that I want to point out when setting up a program in Zoom. What is appropriate for a meeting versus what is appropriate for an actual webinar. A meeting is great for networking or roundtable discussions with members. And a webinar is most appropriate for a presentation style program where engagement is not a top objective. You probably have seen in the news the hype around Zoom bobbing, which can be quite offensive actually. Sometimes funny, but more times than not offensive, and the security concerns surrounding that. There are some steps that you can actually take to mitigate that risk, and I've put together a brief overview of some of those steps today. If you don't make the Zoom registration link public, that would be a win. What we have done is collect registrations as normal through our CRM, like you would for any in-person event. Prior to the event, we send the Zoom URL along with our standard event reminder. You can also enable the password function, and that's just an additional layer of security there. And you can create an online waiting room. Once you launch the webinar, you can choose to allow attendees in one by one or all at once. You will be able to see who is in the queue before going live if you use the waiting room function. In addition, you can make sure and set it up for only hosts or panelists to share their screen. And finally, you can lock the meeting once it starts. I have a document with more detailed information on security measures that I can share after the call if anyone is interested. Okay, so let's get to the meat of what I think y'all really want to hear about today, which is event content ideas. Since the COVID crisis, the Gwinnett Chamber has held more than 65 online events that have engaged more than 2,000 attendees. Today I'll hit on some of them, but certainly not all, or else we'd probably be having dinner together. For the most part, what we did is just bring the existing event branding to an online version. So what does that mean exactly? For example, we had a monthly small business series event. Instead of meeting in person, we just transitioned that event into an online platform. As far as the content goes, some of it will need to be COVID and topical related, of course. However, it's good if all of your offerings aren't surrounding the COVID crisis. Try and think about what your members need in this new normal, and then how you can satisfy that need as an organization. I also want to mention that the Gwinnett Chamber has been the curator of the content, but not the creator. We have really leaned on our members to provide the actual information and serve as the actual presenter, with our guidance, of course. If your chamber is like ours, about 90% of your members are small businesses. So I'll spend a little bit more time in this area. Here are some examples of just some things we did for our small business series. We hosted an Ask the Experts panel where we utilized our local SBA resource partners as the small biz go-tos, so to speak. Our speakers were Access to Capital for Entrepreneurs, SCORE, and the Small Business Development Center. We set it up where members could submit questions in advance, and then on the back end, we assigned them to a specific panelist. This was when the CARES Act was initially rolled out, and most of the questions were surrounding that. Attendees really found value in that session, particularly. We also did a webinar specifically covering the CARES Act and had someone from the US SBA, who is also on the Entrepreneurial Council at the White House, present. We had a leadership company, Giant Worldwide, which I know are in a lot of communities. So a lot of these examples that I'll provide could be carried over into your community. Anyways, we had a leadership company, Giant Worldwide, present a two-part program on crisis communication, and we coined it Quarantined. I cannot take credit for that. That was totally a giant move, but I thought it was brilliant. In addition, we held 2 sessions focusing on how to reach customers online and using data to drive growth, where Google representative was the presenter. And lastly, we had someone talk about how to sell in uncertain times. I know that is a question about what is appropriate when selling right now. Is it appropriate when selling? How do you sell right now with everything that's going on? And due to demand, we've actually held that event twice already, and we'll probably hold it again as things shift in the future. Prior to COVID, we had 2 weekly networking events that we held, Business Before Hours and then Gwinnett Working. Our digital dialogue is a spin-off of those programs in an online format. The event we hold this event as an actual Zoom meeting, not a webinar, so people can engage through video conferencing. We hold it daily at 10 a.m., so there's some consistency there, just like you would have with your online events. And each member has 2 minutes to share their elevator pitch. To keep it organized on the back end, we send the order people will go in to the attendees in advance, so everyone's not talking all over each other. In addition, we send everyone's contact information to each other, kind of like a digital business card pack, so they can further connect offline after the event is over. And we limit attendance at that event to 10 people. Many of you probably have a standard monthly membership meeting. Our on-topic event is our version of that, where we engage high-profile speakers, and the content is typically issues-based. We had a COVID update that had a focus on a national, state, and local level. Our presenters were a U.S. Congressman, the Lieutenant Governor, and our county administrator. People really enjoyed hearing the perspective from 3 different levels. In addition, we're also hosting another COVID update next week where we'll have the CEO of our health department present. As you know, part of the value we can offer as a chamber is providing access to top-notch speakers that our members would not have the opportunity to hear from otherwise. And speakers like this accomplish that goal. Our HERMA group provides human resource professionals with the continuing education credits they need to be compliant. Through our HERMA series, we have heard from our Department of Labor Commissioner. We also had a local law firm talk about unemployment issues during the pandemic. Both of these programs were applicable to our entire membership base, not just HR professionals. So by rolling this into our existing HERMA branding, we were able to expose that program to members who typically would not even know it existed otherwise, frankly. We hope by doing so that it will expand the program, and when the dust settles, additional members will be engaged in those offerings. At the Gwinnett Chamber, we have 2 membership tiers. We have a general membership level, and then we have our executive level, which we call the Chairman's Club. If you don't have an executive level membership, you could use some of these examples for your board of directors or even for your general members. And before I go over the Chairman's Club information, I also want to mention that we've held our board of directors meetings digitally as well. And we've had a hospital representative speak, we've had the Federal Reserve Bank come and speak in an online platform. And again, just giving our members and especially our board of directors that access, they have really appreciated. Back to the Chairman's Club, we had Dale Carnegie present Leadership Blind Spots. It's a really cool program because the blind spots they talk about are areas of improvement that we can all make as leaders. It's based on data where they actually polled employees, and it was really well received. In addition, we had Giant back again to present a remote keynote, which I thought was cute, again, a Giant thing, on crisis communication. And lastly, we created industry-specific as well as general CEO roundtables with our Chairman's Club members. It is a platform for them to share their best business practices with one another during this time. We have some standard questions as backup in our arsenal, but really once you get it going, the program tends to run itself. We limit this program as well to about 10 to 15 to facilitate conversation. We found that the smaller, more intimate events, people are more encouraged to actually speak candidly and organically, and it doesn't seem quite as forced as to if you have a large program and you're trying to get people to speak. Plus, logistically, it just seems to work out better that way. But this, the roundtables and the CEO chat have been a top value add for our members, and they've continued to connect offline with each other after the event, which is what it's all about. I know many of you have programs for your young professionals, so I'll touch briefly on a couple of events we have done for them. We did a mastermind study group that is a 5-part series that was presented by the John Maxwell Group. Again, another resource that you all probably have in your community. In addition, we had a social program where they did trivia, which was pretty neat. As you know, our young professionals are looking to us as to how we will continue to lead during the crisis. And it's still important that we are offering development and connection opportunities for them. And lastly, I'll cover a couple of programs that are under our Partnership Gwinnett portfolio. Partnership Gwinnett is our public and private economic development initiative. I know that many of you wear the hats of economic development for your communities as well, in addition to chamber life. So I wanted to be sure to touch base on these. When the COVID shelter-in-place orders came across for our county and state, people had questions surrounding what is essential business, what is not essential business. That was something we were able to turn and burn on to offer assistance to our investors immediately, and they really appreciated it. We also had a webinar on the impact of COVID on exports. Gwinnett County is certainly not on the waterway, though it would be great, but we have many manufacturers and distributors in our community due to our proximity to the Atlanta airport and the fact that we are the most international community in the Southeast. Although we are about 4 hours from the Ports Authority, they are an integral part of our logistics ecosystem. So we had them speak to exporting as well as our state economic development agency. Before we jump to a quick promotion overview, I just want to touch a little bit on the member reception. Our members have been so appreciative and positive about our online offerings. They've certainly noticed that we didn't take time to kind of switch to Pivotal. We just tested and tried things out and got right on it, and they have been so grateful. Also, our local business chronicle has picked up stories about the online events, so they've been very well received, not only from our members' perspective, but the community's perspective as well. Regarding the promotion of the online programs, we really haven't done anything that's earth-shattering here, but I'll share a couple things we have done just in case you may have some takeaways. And I apologize, the train is going by. Hopefully y'all can still hear me. Emily, can you hear?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, perfect. Regarding promotion of the online programs, we used to send emails to our members daily with 1 or 2 events that we were focusing on. We've shifted that model and created a daily email that just lists the upcoming programs. It's nothing fancy, it's just like a snapshot view, but it gets it to the point and it gets, it in front of people every single day. However, at the top, there is a featured event, that's with an image that changes daily. We include events for up to 10 days in advance. Also, we produce a social media bank that includes pre-written posts that accompany an image that is sized to use on social media. I've put a couple of examples there. We send this to our staff to share, but we also send it to the speakers as well as the sponsors for the program, and it just expands our reach. We create a Facebook event for each program, which I'm sure y'all do. And we also ask our staff to check in even if they're not going, so it shows up in their feed and in their networks as well. And lastly, when appropriate, we do a little bit of social media advertising, not a whole lot, but just for $50 on Facebook, you can get a pretty good reach. Okay, so now let's pivot to our last point, lessons learned. When in doubt, just try it. I mean, your members are doing the exact same thing that we are doing in regards to trying new things, utilizing technology during this crisis. It's important to show that we are still here for them, providing value in this uncertain time. Also, practice makes perfect. Dedicate the same attention to detail you would for an in-person program for an online one. Create an agenda, time it out, make sure everyone is aware of the run of show so your transitions are smooth, especially when you have multiple speakers. And literally, you can do a test run to work out the kinks in advance. Zoom will allow that, and Emily and I did that today. Maintain control. This is an important one, and this is a hard lesson that I learned, unfortunately. Even if you have a company who insists on using their own platform, I highly suggest you use your own. Otherwise, if an issue occurs, you can't do anything about it. I'll just give you a quick fun example that is very fresh because it happened last week. We had a speaker who forgot to share his screen. It was literally like watching a runaway train because he was not paying attention to the chat, people raising their phones, my phone calls, my text messages. There was nothing I could do because it was not on our platform. It took him 30 minutes to realize that he did not share his screen. And at that point, I had already sent an email to all the attendees telling them to abort mission and that we would just have to reschedule the webinar. If you host on your own account, it alleviates that issue that could occur. And, this guy is a veteran. He does many webinars a week and has been doing so even before COVID. But when you're on the back end, stuff just happens. And especially when people are working from home, distractions are easier to come by. So my final thought on that is just no matter how seasoned the speaker is, it behooves you to maintain that control. And then lastly, don't assume. Don't assume that presenters will know how to operate Zoom or that they will realize that they should probably put on a clean shirt for the webinar when they're the presenter. Don't assume that an attendee will not bring the phone to the restroom with them when they're on a networking video call. Like, set your guidelines in advance, give people some housekeeping notes like Emily did, and just don't assume and over communicate if necessary. So that is all I have for today. I know Emily probably has some questions. So I'm just going to stop sharing and we'll take some questions. Emily, I think you might be muted.
Yep, sorry. This is what happens when I multitask really quickly. So Callie, could you please answer the question that I sent you ahead of time, and then I'm going to send you the questions that we've been getting live now. And if you have further questions, please put them in the chat. We will not be unmuting folks for this webinar, okay? So please put your questions in the chat. If you can't find the chat, if you toggle your mouse at the bottom of your screen, you will see the options. If you click on more, you'll be able to access the chat feature from there. All right, Callie, it's all yours now.
Thanks, Emily. And sorry, y'all, I'm looking at my phone. I don't want you to think I'm not looking at you, but I want to make sure that I get the question correct. So this question is from Caitlin, and it's kind of like a three-part question. And she says, a huge value for our members is the casual connections that they have at our in-person events. I think people attend events for the following reasons: to be seen in the room, to see others, and then the actual program and what the educational element to that is. Number 3 is easily converted to digital formats. Yes, I agree, Caitlin. But how do you convert number 1 and number 2? Specifically, how do you recreate the casual networking opportunity versus the forced curated connection? It's a very good question, Caitlin. I would suggest starting with some icebreakers if you're doing something for a networking platform. You know, what restaurant do you want to go eat at when, you know, the stay-at-home order is lifted? Something to that nature to loosen it up. Personal questions are a great way to do that. And if it still seems forced coming from the chamber, from a chamber staff employee, what you can do is what you would possibly do in an in-person event. Sometimes we plant members in the room and we give them a couple questions to ask, because, you know, no one really wants to ever be that first person asking the question in an in-person scenario. And sometimes it's very similar when you're online as well. So if you have an ambassador or another chamber volunteer or a chamber member that you have a good relationship with, give them a couple pointers and have them start the dialogue with some personal questions to loosen it up a little bit. Okay, let me pull up the other questions from Emily. Give me just a second. Okay, Emily, not our ACC Emily, but another Emily. How are you bringing in event revenue? Focusing on sponsorships or registration fees? How do you decide which events to charge for? So what we've done is we're actually offering our online digital events free for chamber members to attend. And then we set up a fee for non-members to attend. In this time, we personally feel like we can't charge people for digital programs at this time. Now, if this continues for months and months, you know, it may be a different situation, but right now we're not charging people to attend events. As far as the sponsorships go, we already had sponsorships sold in the existing programs. So if someone was a sponsor of our On Topic Luncheon, we just rolled that over into a digital platform, and then we have them speak at the beginning and so forth. So that's how we've been handling that. Okay, let's see here. Meg, are you using Zoom breakouts? Have they been successful? Actually, Meg, we just had a conversation about that yesterday, and my colleague Sarah looked into it and she said that it appears to be very user-friendly. So we were thinking about actually testing that out with our membership orientation, which last year we formatted into a roundtable type of atmosphere. So I'll let you know, to be determined. But what I would suggest is, of course, just test it out and make sure it all works well. Okay, let's see, Lauren. Have you been doing any online events for nonprofits and coaching them how to transition their fundraising to digital fundraisers right now? Lauren, thank you so much for your question. We have not done that, but that's simply because we have another organization that's like a trade organization for nonprofits that is in our building. So they're really, you know, carrying the torch on that initiative. But a couple good organizations to benchmark. I'm not sure what state you're in, but if you're looking at Georgia and they may have similar programs for your state, you could look into the Community Foundation for Northeast Georgia. That's what ours is called. And then there's also an organization, let's see what it's called. It's the Center for Nonprofits. And that's a statewide trade organization for nonprofits. So I would suggest just looking into some of their programs and seeing if you can piggyback off of that. Okay, Nicole, do you allow the public to attend some of your webinars, or do you keep it members only? We allow the public. So we have members and then we have non-members. The member rate is free, and then the non-member, it's a nominal fee, 10, 20 bucks, something to that effect. We absolutely allow non-members. Our chamber's position right now has been to help all business, especially in the small business realm. We have served as a resource, whether they're a member or not, because we care about the sustainability and success and recovery of our area. So that's how we've positioned ourselves. I know other chambers may have a different spin on that, but that's what we've personally done. In fact, when we partner on some of our small business programs, we actually partner with SCORE and SBDC and so forth, and we ask that they share the information, and we've gotten a lot of non-members in that way. And that just exposes your Chamber of Commerce, if you're engaging non-members, to what the member value is. So I definitely think that it's a good idea to engage non-members with your webinars, unless you have a limited amount of attendees that you're trying to engage. So like for a networking event, if you only are allowing 10, then maybe make something like that members only. But if it's a webinar where your capacity is 100 or 500, then certainly I'd allow non-members to participate. Okay, April, have you had success with creating a website for your virtual event that attendees can access for the event? We have an upcoming event with exhibitors and would like attendees to move on their own to various exhibitors. So our website connects with our CRM directly, which is Atlas, and it populates to our calendar of events. We used to have separate websites for most of our standalone big programs that we did. We started steering away from that last year, and we have microsites within our websites with the event information. If you want to take a look at how that looks and how it's laid out, you can go on gwinnettchamber.org, and there's a tab that has all of our programs. But let me know if you have any questions about that offline. Okay, Katie, I'd like to know if they are charging for any events or plugging in new sponsors or shifting sponsors from canceled events. Excuse me, I think I kind of answered that question already. Currently, we're funneling sponsors that we had already sold. If they were a sponsor for an On Topic, then we would make them a sponsor for the digital On Topic. However, if you're having to cancel events, I think you can look at it one of two ways. I mean, frankly, unless you're engaging thousands of people, the value's not going to be as high to be a sponsor for a digital program versus an online program, just because the in-person reach isn't going to be as much. So you could look at funneling it to a different program later on in the year that's going to be in person. So like if you sell a sponsorship for $2,000, maybe try to push that sponsorship and move it to another program in Q3 or Q4, or you can move it to the digital platform as well. You would just run the risk of the value not equating the same way, if that makes any sense. How are we doing on time, Emily?
You have time for about one more question, too, if you answer them quickly.
Okay, let's see here. Okay, have you guys hosted any medium to large events digitally? If so, have you had success in hosting those? Can you tell us how you are marketing those to your members? Yes, we've had a few quite large events. It just depends on who the attendee and who our audience is as to how many attendees we have for the events. But the CARES Act overview one was a big one. We had hundreds of people on that. The Department of Labor one was a big one. We had a lot of people on that. The trifecta that I mentioned, where we had the congressman, the lieutenant governor, and the county administrator, that one was another large program that we had, and they have been successful. I would just suggest, if you're going to do a large program like that, then on your back end, set it up as a webinar. Sorry, there's my dog. And not an actual meeting. If you set it up as a webinar, then you're not going to have as much interference as far as digital lag or Zoom bombing. You know, if you set it up as a webinar, you're less likely to have those types of issues. So any large programs, I would just suggest setting up as a webinar. Okay, and I think I'm probably out of time with my dog barking. I'll probably let that be my last question, Emily.
I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty impressive that your dog waited until the very end to practice their operatic skills.
Yeah, I may have begged her / threatened her just slightly.
Just very slightly. But anyway, thank you so much, Callie. I don't know about y'all, but I learned a lot. And if you have any additional questions, please feel free to email me or Callie. Callie, if you could please put your email in the chat during this time, that would be really helpful. Also at this time, I would highly recommend that you save the chat. How you do that is you pull up the chat window, click on the 3 dots, and there will be an option to save the chat. If you have any additional questions, like I said, please feel free to email either myself or Callie. And we have a wrong thing. And just as a side note, while you are saving the chat, next Wednesday on April 29th, we'll have another all-division roundtable discussion for events professional on COVID-19 related issues. Please feel free to sign up, and I will drop the link in the chat now. But thank you. This is why I should not multitask. But thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. And I look forward to seeing more of your beautiful faces on our future webinars and roundtable discussions. Thank you very much and have a great rest of your day. Bye.